coming up in this week's episode.
I mean, obviously partying with Neptune at 29 requires some kind of intoxication. Yo! I gotta pay my bills, pay my automobiles, pay my telephone bills.
There could be groups of people who love astrology, but like want to listen to people who are just talking about astrology like an everyday thing. And you start to realize how reality is totally not what we believe.
Like the precision of God's creation is just ridiculous.
I do think though, if it is, it's a spiritual war. It's a war of consciousness.
The souls are fighting because the point is they want control over the 12th dimension.
It's lunacy. Lunacy Logic with Lilith and Dr. Charlier.
Welcome back, Cosmic Families. Excited to be back here with Black Moon Lilith.
And welcome back to Lunacy and Logic, another episode with Dr. Charlier. What's happening, Dr. Charlier?
Things has been good. Mars has moved from Cancer, opposing Pluto in Capricorn, and now Mars is going to Leo.
I mean, that Mars-Pluto conjunction, I felt it. I had one friend that just literally, he had like twisted some of my words to concoct a story in his mind, which he then based all his anger on and then just shot it at me with a Mars opposing Pluto. Like,
Yeah.
So I definitely felt the Mars opposing Pluto because I also saw it, like similar things happen in other people's lives, like just an explosion of anger, really. And I don't think that explosion of anger is really finished yet because you've had the Mars opposing Pluto situation. Now Mars is going retrograde in Leo, no less. So that is a lot of short tempers, being temperamental right there because of the fiery nature of Leo. Yeah, looking forward to that one.
What's really interesting is, and the retrograde is probably going to go back and forth from Leo to Cancer, which is kind of like this like the masculine feminine energy, right? Of that energy of the fiery Leo energy, which is all about confidence and having fun and like showing up, but then like going back into the emotional side of the mother energy, where it's all about nurturing and healthcare. And I think this is very interesting. Because there's this kind of like people are wounded. I think on both sides, people are happy and they're excited about what's happening next. And then on the other side, some people are kind of wounded for what they believe happened to them, right? And it's almost kind of like this both polarity of both sides. But what's really interesting is now this Mars in Leo is actually getting people to really like show up as themselves now. What's really exciting is I feel like with this election, we're talking about like the people taking back power because Pluto in Capricorn was this authoritarian, the authority, the corporations, the big pharma, big money, big anything taking over the people. And so when you have kind of like this Mars in Cancer, like that feminine nurturing, hey, we need to really heal. You have this like RFK Jr. character that's coming into really a leadership role to say, hey, guys, we are unhealthy as a country. We need to come together. So I think this Mars in Leo, Mars in Cancer is getting a little bit of like, are we going to have less censorship on health? Because here we are, both of us are acupuncturists, and we are talking about this whole censoring of our own practice, of our own medicine, right? And so I feel like this kind of Pluto in Capricorn has been kind of like the group holding us hostage and not allowing us to express ourselves. So I think Mars going between Cancer and Leo is kind of like this suppression of both our passions and our emotions.
I feel like when Mars goes retrograde, because it's like the planet of go, 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 when it goes retrograde, it slows things down a little bit. So you get like sluggish, a little bit lazy. So yeah, I've been trying to get everything done before then. in preparation for not wanting to do anything until April next year.
I mean, I think it's an
Because that's
opportunity.
when Mars goes direct again, huh?
Well, I think it's an opportunity to go within and an opportunity to do shadow work. I think it's a really good opportunity for that because with that retrograding back into Cancer, you want to have that mother energy to be there for you when you're kind of like licking your wounds and saying, hey, we've made it to finally the year when we are freeing ourselves from the clutches of an authoritarian government regime, right? Capricorn, with a lot of this corporation, and so we can move forward into Leo, which is more about like being confident about ourselves, right? Where we like trust in our own, and this is kind of what we have to learn is to have our own agency of our own like choice of health, choice of living, choice of my body, my life, like how do we want to live? And that's very much this Leo energy, right? And I think that the Cancer gives us an opportunity to go within and not have to like be like, this is not a good time for protesting, basically, right? Because I feel like in that protesting, sure, we're showing the emotional, irrational, negative side of the Cancer energy, but actually the more positive side of Cancer is like licking your wound, saying, hey, like, you thought this was going to happen, it didn't happen, you're going to go home now and like kind of feel bad, but like what is the shadow work that we can do so we can get up again and tomorrow face another day, right? Whatever that means to everybody.
I mean, for me, that shadow work is just imperative right now because of the placement of Chiron and Saturn generally. With, in particular, this would be more applicable for the Pisces sun signs, the Pisces rising signs, the Aries suns and the Aries rising. Lucky me, I'm both Pisces sun and Aries rising. So living the dream from now until April next year, when Chiron conjuncts my ascendant at the same time as Saturn conjuncts my sun. I don't know if I'm going to blow up in a ball of karmic smoke or...
I mean, you're going into your natural hibernation anyways, right? I mean, as a Pisces sign, your energy really kicks in right before April, which is around Easter, which is around spring when Aries comes back in the astrology New Year's. And so for you, you are gonna go into hibernation for a bit until I think, April, when right after your birthday, when the energy will have passed you and is ready to go back.
I don't know. God has already let me know what my present is, and He has given me Neptune at 29 for the entire month of March Madness.
So March Madness will really mean something differently to you, right?
March Madness is going to be the biggest party with Neptune at 29. I've been waiting for this for 160 years.
Okay, so it's a party. So you're saying it's going to be a big
Yes,
party.
I'm talking about the party. The Neptune at 29 party.
Is it going to be a party in your dreams?
Interesting. No, the last Neptune at 29, I was just doing a lot of good partying.
Okay. You could totally be doing, how is partying in your dreams? You're like dreaming.
Well, I mean, obviously, partying with Neptune at 29 requires some kind of intoxication.
Okay.
That's the key. The only thing is that I always tell people, like, you're going to have the time of your life getting intoxicated with Neptune at 29. Pisces. Okay. But what are the pitfalls? The pitfalls are, don't enjoy it too much that you want to do it again and again and again, because Neptune is going to get you addicted and then you're done for. And the other thing is, say now you're drinking. Don't be drinking and driving with Neptune at 29, because that shit will put you in jail. You know what I'm saying? Neptune at 29, you got to know the pitfalls to know how to fully maximize the benefit. So it's all about getting intoxicated in a safe, secure place.
Yeah. But Saturn will still be around there too. So that's the one you have to watch out for. Saturn in Pisces also.
Well, what I'm saying is, for March Madness, for my birthday month, I've got Neptune at 29 right before my birthday. So like end of Feb, I have Saturn conjunct my sun exactly at the same time as Chiron conjunct my ascendant exactly.
Wow, that's yeah. So a lot of internal work in February, so that March Madness party will be a lot of fun, right? So it's
Bro, the internal work hasn't stopped.
gonna be a big test for you. So this is how the idea of transits, right? So before that party, I guess you're going to have this kind of moment of truth where Saturn like comes right to the sun. It's almost like the police car pulls over next to your car and looks at you and makes sure everything's in check before he either goes or like pulls behind you and turns on the sirens.
Are you trying to curse me right now?
No,
You should know the power of the word, Dr. Charlie. What are you doing?
Well, what I'm trying to say is this is how the idea of a Saturn energy coming conjunct to the sun would feel like for anyone who's experiencing it. For you, it'd be different, right? But for anyone, you know, Saturn conjuncting your sun would be kind of like, you know, again that, or maybe it's your father, mother comes home to check whether or not like you did your chores or you did what you said you were going to do.
I mean, up until now, so like yesterday, Chiron conjuncted my ascendant again, exactly. But so up until now, it's pretty much been going through my 12th house. This is a lot of healing of past life karma. So by the time Chiron conjuncts my ascendant and Saturn conjuncts my sun, I guess that will be the peak of the clearance.
Could you imagine different versions of you in parallel movies? They're like the resolution is happening.
Well, I mean, you know, one doesn't know if karma is like going to repeat itself, and all of a sudden I shoot myself in the foot, like Chiron, and just like die. I don't know, because Chiron conjunct your ascendant is like, it can be like a wound to the physical body as well, right? I mean, it's not necessarily.
Don't create those words that you're saying now. Shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with Saturn in Pisces.
Erase, delete, cancel.
Yeah. Control Z.
Yes. Undo.
It's been a lot of healing and everything up until now, but you could think Chiron conjunct the ascendant, which is the physical body, can be also an injury to the physical body. With Saturn traveling through Pisces, this can include broken bones. So, or a broken foot, or broken bones in the foot. I mean, there's many things. Yeah, we'll have to watch this space for the effects of.
I personally think when it's really beautiful because you can imagine when when Mars is going forward into Leo, there's a lot of confidence, there's a lot of trust in being yourself. But then I feel like when it retrogrades, it's almost like you have a lack of confidence in something, and that lack of confidence, ironically, goes into now Mars in Cancer, which is where we do this inner work of healing to then support us to heal whatever it's not giving us confidence, and so we can go back into Mars, into Leo, and suddenly get that confidence boost again because we did this shadow work a few weeks back. And this is kind of why this beautiful retrograde is important as we see it in astrology. You know, a lot of people only hear of Mercury retrograde and they may not fully understand how like a Mars retrograde would show up as like, where do you get a lot of energy to feel confident about life, and where do you feel like you're not having confidence? And that part that you feel not confident enough is possibly going to be involved in this retrograde that helps us kind of tune in into what makes us feel uncomfortable, emotionally stunted because something happened when we were younger or around our parents.
For me, ruled by Mars, I would say for me, and therefore Leo is my 5th house. For me, going through Mars is very much a time for my inner child to come out. And I think now with Mars kind of retrograding in Leo and Saturn up there in Pisces with Chiron in the ascendant, it's very much like, exactly like you said, like you were all confident and everything, but when Mars goes retrograde, it's almost like you a dog with your tail running between your legs. The confidence wanes a little bit, and then you go in and you nurture yourself. nurture that inner child so that it can come out and play again. So always, if that's the case, then there's some kind of upgrade that gets done. And so Mars has to go into Cancer to upgrade you had gone through in the shadow period. In other words, when Mars went through that same area of the sky the first time round, which was from the 4th of October.
Yeah, and what's really important too is that Mars in Cancer was triggered by the opposing Pluto in Pluto in Capricorn, and so it is very much a time where that wounding will most likely be connected to like for me when I worked in corporate, there's a lot of things I wanted to do, be creative about in the company. When I worked at Disney or different other corporations, so a lot of times like I didn't get to be creative or I didn't get to express my creativity, and so that process of like me not being able to be creative or suppressing that energy was part of maybe what makes me more frustrated right now, or in general like being afraid to be creative in my own space. And so it allows me to kind of go, hey, I remember those days when I wasn't allowed to be creative or express my emotions because of corporation or big pharma, like the whole idea where someone gave me prescription to deal with my emotional problems. Like I was like, maybe I had just broke up with someone. I'm like, hey, I don't need prescription. I just need someone to like help me through, me breaking up in a relationship. Probably more seventh house, but like they said, you're the corporate, right? So being able to process what it feels like.
Well, if you were living with a person, it would be the same.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Not being able to be yourself because maybe people that you were growing up with made fun of like the way you dress, and so now like you secretly want to dress the way you really want to, which is that whole Mars in Leo. But you feel almost ashamed to dress up that way because, like for me, it's like being able to wear my Asian clothing, right? I grew up and people thought, oh, you're so fobby, you're so fresh off the boat, you're so, you're such an immigrant, basically. If they're saying like, hey, you're what's it called, fobby, what we called it, which is fresh off the boat, which is we basically were like fresh immigrants, and so we still look like immigrants, right?
I'm an alien. I'm a legal alien.
And I was a legal alien, right? Because I was doing things legally. Legal alien coming in.
Pluto in Aquarius, legal aliens.
Exactly. And so what happened is, Pluto in Capricorn could be like, the school or kids in school making fun of the way I dressed. And so that's why I stopped kind of wearing the clothing that represented being Asian, right? And so this Mars in Leo, Mars in Cancer, it feels like, hey, that Capricorn energy is no longer there. So I get to now express this, and that's going to all of us give us much more confidence in being ourselves. And that's why it's really exciting to feel this energy of, I think there's a lot more, like this is gonna, I feel like when people say make America great again, it really was a time when I think during the boomer age where it was Pluto in Leo and where a lot of people were doing well in business because everybody had their own business, everybody was an entrepreneur, and everybody was just living their life, right? Versus today, we ended up having to work for corporate, otherwise we couldn't pay for the bills, right? So nobody has their own business. And I think now with this Pluto in Aquarius kind of ending the Capricorn age, but now you have like Mars moving into Leo, it's kind of like, did you ever dream of your dream job? And that's an opportunity of like, Mars in Leo, we were meant to be that person that works in our dream job, right? And I think this Capricorn energy ending is like giving Mars almost like the sun, the opportunity. Sun, you get to pick your career now. You don't have to follow into what we told you had to. Like as Asians have to be doctors and lawyers and engineers. But now like suddenly everyone told Asians, hey Asians, you no longer have to be these 3-4 jobs because that's the only way that you'll be seen as an Asian American in this country. I mean, that's definitely our parents' social conditioning, but that feels like a very Capricorn energy, right? Of holding us back.
You know, it's interesting that you say that, because I look at like fifth house Leo is more like creative energy, because you said changing jobs or whatever. It's actually, it goes in line with what I'm saying with Mars in Leo and retrograding and going back into Leo, almost like giving that self-nurturing to create something, to start creating something when Mars, you know, eventually is direct in Leo. And that almost like plants the seeds for when Mars will go into the sixth house, because or Virgo, because that is when you're going to really act on changing your daily routines, which is maybe, you know, you maybe got and applied for that new job with Mars in Leo, but with Mars in Virgo you started. So it is almost like the process you just said about, you know, starting businesses and stuff. I'm hoping that Mars in Leo this time round gets a lot of creation going, because Pluto will already be at 0 degrees Aquarius. So that's basically setting the stage for the next 15-year build-up.
Yeah, so that's very exciting because I do feel like, and I feel like this election was also a global election. I think that other countries, as soon as we voted, like I heard different country leaders call Trump right away, and so it's really interesting that this is not like a shift for just our country, but like as a planet as a whole. I feel like it is shifting the planet as a whole, and the conversation of legal aliens and aliens, because we're moving to Pluto and Aquarius, is really going to open up, I believe, for me, secretly super excited for, I think, open contact with our galactic brothers and sisters. But I do know that we need a progression into that. And so I'm happy that Pluto in Aquarius would just dabble into it for the next couple of years. But, this is important for us as a planet to really come to terms of us being brothers and sisters on this planet, so that we can have a connection with the galactic brothers and sisters who are possibly watching this season going, wow, this is the most exciting season. Like, everything is up for grabs. The astrology, everybody knew the astrology was one of the craziest transits in the last 5 years, and even more to come. And so I'm sure everybody will came down and said, look, check out this crazy not self transits where all these things are going to go back and forth and really revolutionize the planet. So that's why I think why we even started the show, I think, in the idea of lunacy and logic, right? We are going to experience a lot of lunacy, but in that our logic is going to have to restructure itself because it was working from an outdated model. And I think the logic now is really accepting the spiritual energy that everything exists, right? And so this logic is now going to the quantum field. I think lunacy and the energy of intuition and magic is coming back now, but it doesn't have that that woo-woo so far beyond us that we don't comprehend the energy. I think that a lot more people are much more open to feeling that we're connected to everything, that we've proven that plants communicate with each other and communicate with us and have emotions and feelings. So we're starting to prove that spirit is in everything, and that's what's really powerful to see where we're moving with Pluto and Aquarius, and how that lunar energy is so prevalent now that we're going to be able to ground out this spiritual energy rather than say, oh, you're just being woo-woo, right? I think that's like a gaslighting when people say, oh, you're just being woo-woo. No, actually being woo-woo is, very powerful way of reading the energetic weather.
No, for sure. I mean, it's a critical time right now. I mean, Pluto is at the US's ascendant, essentially. And we spoke previously, I think in one of the episodes, if I'm not mistaken, about the Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune trine that's happening. For those that didn't want Trump to win, the one thing that you can be glad of is that while Trump is in office, you've got this Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto trine that is really the energies of divine protection. So don't worry too much. For those who did want Trump to win, you can look at it from the perspective of, oh, divine protection, that's why Trump won. You can look at it from both ways. Either way, whichever way you look at it, there is divine protection involved. So we're all good. It's so good. Everything's fine. It's all fine. It's fine.
It is, y'all. Like, you guys don't understand how exciting it is to, also for me, like, to be able to see the astrology from the days when things were like considered slow, but personally probably intense, but was considered slow pre-COVID. And then when COVID happened, and I started to track astrology more deeply, and I would kind of ask other astrologers, like, are these transits like a big deal? Because like I've never seen so many transits happen all at once, and they were very like big transits, right? Like the Pluto change in sign is a big transit. Some of the Pluto Capricorn, no, was it Pluto Saturn conjunctions was big. So I think what's really interesting is now that I'm paying attention, like I'm more excited to be able to teach people and to guide people into learning how to read astrology, because if you're able to read astrology, you're able to understand um, how your life is involved into the bigger grand scheme of this beautiful experiment that's happening on this planet. Astrology is just really beautiful because astrology explains a lot of the prophecies that every book talks about. This, whether it's the Bible, the Quran, all the Tibetan books, like just all the spiritual books, right? I think a lot of them talk about these moments where the consciousness of the planet would shift because the transits of the astrology would actually give us an opportunity to go through deeper inner work so that we would actually evolve into like these spiritual beings that have connection to each other, right? And I think that's why you're seeing the collective kind of waking up. And I think this moment is, the thing is, it's not that we voted for Trump. It's that we voted for each other to get involved, more involved, so that the government wouldn't get involved. I think the whole concept of when we have the government or an entity like a corporation taking care of us, yeah, then of course you can't get mad when that entity doesn't care about your rights. Versus when we are in charge of our own life, we care about how our children are and our lives in our community, so we would actually take more leadership and ownership to our lives. And that's kind of where a lot of us really voted for. It's like, hey, yes, the government will help us, but like let us do our what we need to do. Don't get involved in our lives, because when we get to live our lives, Mars in Leo, we get to love what we do, so that when we do the job that we have to do to get paid, we love doing that job instead of doing that job out of duty, right? And so it's a very interesting time right now for us to. That's what the entrepreneur spirit is all about. What is it that you love to do that people will pay you because you love to do that?
Yeah, I mean it's a nice way to think like that people will pay you for, but I mean I fought, I think, with some astrologers because when I was speaking about, doing something and then also you get money, right? Because I have to do something. So I said I chose this to get money in because it's something I like. And then they came around and told me, oh, but you're only doing it for money, so it's never going to work. I mean, yo, I got to pay my bills, pay my automobiles, pay my telephone bills. You know what I'm saying? So, I don't know. So, yeah, I agree with that. But I mean, that just made me think when the astrologer said that. But I really haven't found a solution to that kind of perspective yet, because, I mean, not everybody has the luxury of just doing something whether they earn money from it or not. Like,
Right.
the
So
reality
but
is we don't live in that existence yet.
yeah, but that's actually exactly what we're talking about. What you're talking about is Pluto and Capricorn. Pluto and Capricorn made us believe that we need to basically have a job to pay for our dreams, our bills, right? And so with the Pluto and Capricorn moving into Pluto and Aquarius, with the whole country saying, "Hey, we work really hard and we can barely make a living. Like this is not the right way of living." And I think what's going to happen is we're going to have a revolution of the jobs that we do want to have rather than the jobs that we have to have, because that's the only jobs that pay anything for us to sustain our lifestyle. And so that's the way where we are kind of rethinking how we value jobs. Like right now, we don't value teachers. If we did, we'd have way better teachers, but we don't, because teachers don't get paid for the amazing things that they do. Doctors as well. Okay, I take that back. I'm gonna rephrase the healthcare space, but like nurses compared to doctors, right? Like nurses put in a ton of effort, a ton of time with their patients sometimes, but sometimes they don't get the reward or they burn out. They don't get their own wellness, right? So I think what's happened is Pluto in Capricorn has created an environment for us that make us live in a space where, like, if I don't get paid for my job, I don't get to do what I love to do. Versus the truth of astrology has always been, the more you are who you love to be, the more you're going to get rewarded for that, right? And so, like, if you're an artist, you really, I can't help but draw, right? And so you want to draw. And so if we pay people who are really good at that the right money, or people who love to heal and can't help it, give them the right, like for us as acupuncturists, we don't get paid much because we're considered not valuable like Western doctors or surgeons, right? But that's because it's the conditioning of this Capricorn energy. So that's why I think what's really exciting is that you will experience, and all of us will experience, that what happens when I get to be myself, love what I do, and get paid for that. And that, I think, is what is this spiritual revolution, this Aquarian revolution that is happening on the planet.
That's 5D right there, going into 4D,
Yeah,
5D.
exactly.
That's heart chakra territory. It's about listening to the heart.
But that's what I'm saying but what you're saying is, how do we transition into that? And I think everybody's at a different level of transitioning into being able to love what we do rather than work for the duty to pay for our bills.
Yeah, it's tough when you're, like, I guess, ahead of the game, and you've got to do this ahead of everybody else without anybody to look up to, that you're not crazy and that you do have to do this,
Exactly. And that's why you hear people who are, like, supposedly, star seeds or light workers, those who've come ahead of the game, and they had to create things from nothing, right? Because everything that we were doing before that was given to us by our government, our corporations, big pharma, and all that.
I feel like now with Jupiter in Gemini, everybody's going to be starting podcasts, no?
Yes, I know. So I really believe that a lot of people believe that Rogan and Trump on the podcast is like that spark that gave people an idea that people are more willing to listen to a podcast like Joe Rogan for 3 hours than watch anything on TV on the news. And so if what people were watching before that was on the news, all those people now are getting redirected to what? Podcast. I really felt like the podcasting with the interviewing someone is going to be way better than the one person sharing something. So as much as I want to do that, I'm starting to notice I have much more energy in doing a conversation or a discussion with somebody on Riverside or Zoom, rather than, because Gemini is this twin energy of the two people talking.
Yes! And to all of those oaks that were wondering, today Charlie and I had Pluto enter our 7th house in the composite chart. I mean, you can't make this shift up.
Yes.
Oh, I hope I didn't shout too loud there. I've still got to learn sound control.
That's Jupiter retrograding right there. Jupiter's retrograding in Gemini, going, wait, how's my sound, everybody? Am I too loud? Did I overdo it? Do I need to speak softer?
Exactly.
Louder?
Yeah. First Jupiter going through Gemini, you're very loud. Then somebody tells you you're very loud, so Jupiter goes retrograde, you reevaluate. When Jupiter goes direct ready, you should be just right. People have been telling me since Jupiter entered Gemini that I talk a lot. And I was like, yo, bro, what do you want from me? Jupiter's in Gemini in my 3rd house. Like, I'm trying here. I'm trying.
But that's why I think podcasts are really great for that right now, right? Because I think the conversation that we are having are important for the collective. And so that's why the idea of recording it, posting it online so people who need to have or listen. And so there could be groups of people who love astrology but like want to listen to people who are just talking about astrology like an everyday thing, right? And that could be like the conversation we're having. And again, everybody, we're still trying to learn what is our vibe that comes out of us talking about astrology. I mean, there's definitely, there's a lot of this. Sometimes we do this translation where I translate some of the astrology that you're saying, but then you're like downloading what's happening to collective in astrology terms, and we're having kind of this really fun way of decoding the astrological timings and geometry. I think it's really fun that you're in South Africa and we're in the States here, and we have and we're both not from here. We're both not born here, and so it's interesting to actually speak about the American culture and being here in the American culture and describing astrology that way.
I mean, coming from another country, I don't usually get too involved with American politics and stuff, mostly because I'm not interested in politics, to be fair. But I do like to discuss it with other people because definitely I feel like people that are in America and very involved in the politics could do with a little bit of an objective viewpoint.
I agree.
So I feel like because I don't really care about politics, I definitely feel like I have an objective viewpoint to bring to the table. But I mean, that's just based on what we know that is going on in terms of the collective consciousness evolution. I have no expertise on politics itself. Everything that I have to say about politics, I'm talking about from a higher story rather than the politics itself.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. That's what I'm saying. Like, this is a very big. This is not an election. Like, this has been like almost like a recontracting of our reality, where people were kind of like, "Hey, the stuff that you guys." I think a lot of us actually haven't been voting for a long time, and because of that, they've been kind of messing with the legals of this country, the contracts of this country, and so I think now getting us back involved and saying, hey, take care of your reality because it's kind of running amok and these are the people. And so, the fact that you had to bring somebody, like Trump to come in, and a lot of us have had different, in 2016, I was not, as much as I wasn't really caring about politics, I was not on the, Trump train. And then I came here to Texas, and I started to look into it further and go, wait, something's up, because the logic didn't make sense. Because suddenly he was like the most attacked person on the planet. So I was like, no one does this much work on somebody unless, like the whole idea of JFK, Lincoln, and all that. Like, there's these stories that are being created. So I started to look into it. Because I was already in the conspiracy bandwagon. And so, like, when people say conspiracy, I'm like, yes, please tell me more. Because I look into it and you start to realize how reality is totally not what we believe. And so what's really interesting now is we've come in this whole Trump conversation of like how people saw him when we first started in 2016 to like today, 2024. It's been like 12 years since this whole conversation of source creator spirit is getting very involved in our politics, because we were not paying attention to it and we were allowing darker agents to run amok in this country. And that's why it's been really interesting that we, as much as we don't like politics, if we don't like politics, politics is being used against us, like a Pluto in Capricorn, so that we were repressed. So I do think that in this coming, I'm excited about Elon Musk, because he's like one of those like comes in, cuts the fat of a business, and then gives you like the bare minimum things to run, and go, wow, like imagine suddenly not having to pay all these taxes, because suddenly we're not paying for all this excess, overused, systems that were human powered. I remember the whole DMV and how people had to push paperwork, and that's how you created a paper trail. A paper trail is what makes documentation in a government exist. But I'm like, guys, we have the iPad, we have like the internet. We could easily break all the paperwork into digital paper trails. And if you have that, you don't need to have like 20 people in DMV running the freaking, you know, license renewal when all you need is just, are you still the same person? Yes, move on. Computer does it, gives you your paperwork, you're done, right? And that like doesn't cost a whole human to do that work. And so I think it's exciting because then those jobs can go back to more creative jobs, artistic jobs, rather than jobs like manage, making sure that like the system or the city is still well managed, right? So that's why it's really exciting that I'm sure a lot of people will lose their job, and that's going to feel terrible for a lot of people. But I think it's like those jobs were never needed. You know, guys, I'm a very bad fan of TSA. I do not think TSA is needed. I think the whole 9/11 and the whole plane thing and the whole those really obnoxious machines that we have to go in to get microwave to like look through whether or not you have guns on you. Again, I don't think all that is necessary. So I do think that we're in an opportunity for like cutting back things that don't work. And I think that's why like this is not a government issue. This is more like how are we running ourselves, right? Even medicine. The fact that is it your doctor or is it the insurance company that owns your health? Because if the doctor tells you to do something, but your insurance company doesn't pay for it, are you going to pay out of pocket, right? That's how screwed up medicine is. And that's this very, to me, like Capricorn energy, again, that's been repressing our culture.
Well, I see also when you talk about like because Mars opposing Pluto, while Mars is retrograding and going back, it's going to be opposing Pluto I think 3 times in total until April 2025. So if you think about, well, the opposition that just happened was Mars in the final degrees of Cancer and Pluto in the final degrees of Capricorn. That's Mars is like fighting for the people, fighting for your family,
Yeah.
fighting for your home.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then you've got this element of control here. I mean, you can't make this shift up. Like, if astrology isn't real, how is everything moving so in sync? You can't make these
Exactly.
stories up.
Yeah.
Like, right in preparation for Pluto to go into Aquarius, like fight for your rights as a
Right.
human, fight for your home, fight
Yeah.
for your family. It's basically Mars opposing Pluto was it's time to fight. The people need to fight.
Fight.
Exactly, exactly. But you know, when it says that, then for me it means, but then the people can win, because why would astrology be telling that the people are fighting? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that to me shows that people can win, because other people have said that Pluto in Aquarius would mean, you know, the two polarities are power to the people, or the power is taken away from the people. But I feel like with this little dance happening between Pluto and Mars right before it enters Aquarius and the people must fight, that for me is like inevitable that the power is going to be back into the people. It's like in preparation for Pluto in Aquarius. You know what I'm saying? You got to fight
Yes.
to get the power.
Yes.
So, I mean, these times are unprecedented. You just can't believe how the planets are all just in sync and how they just prepare us for everything. Like the precision of God's creation is just ridiculous.
Yeah. And this is how also the idea of returned. And so we are having our Pluto return because what was it like 200 years ago is when the United States of America was formed, like 1776, right? And so I forgot the numbers, but like we're basically having this Pluto return. And so as much as this has been unprecedented, the energies have been precedented because it represented the energy around the American Revolution and the French Revolution. And so we are having an American Revolution, but it does not have to be a violent overthrow of the government revolution, but rather because our phones, because our ability to be actually all up to date with information, in the click of a second, anything that happens on the planet, we could potentially know the news of it. I mean, especially across the nation, right? When anything bombed in another country, the entire planet was aware of it. And so the power of communication is very powerful today. You know, and so what are we doing with that power? And I think that's what's really exciting is that people have these phones who are basically mini computers who have access to like everything. And so now like people can rule ourselves rather than what we needed someone to rule us, because maybe we didn't have access to information, or we needed someone to kind of pay attention to how everybody was working. But now with like data, like we understand that like our phones is capturing data constantly, and if all of us have this data together, can we recongregate, rebuild, or recreate teams so that we can help each other out faster, rather than like going through the process of working with a company, doing this, doing that, that like makes everything, like bureaucracy. Bureaucracy would take everything like 2 to 3 months. You have to wait for things to happen. But today, in an instant, we can get our news from across the world. And so if information is that quick now, as we're moving to Pluto and Aquarius, how can we decentralize our work so that everyone can work together? And that I think is really exciting.
But what I was going to say is, well, with regards to the unprecedented energies for the revolution, the reason why I say it was unprecedented was because it's not only those energies. It's those energies coupled with the energies of both world wars, coupled with the energies of the French Revolution, coupled with,
Yeah.
do you know what I'm saying? It's so many
An
energies coming down at one time.
Yep.
That yes, most astrologers will look at this time and be like, yo, there's a World War III coming for sure. But I tend to agree with you. Like, I don't think a war is going to happen, at least not on my timeline.
Exactly. Yes.
So I just think this is a culmination of it's like a culmination of realization,
Yeah.
You've had all these wars now, and so now it's like all coming together so that you can, look at it and be like, oh, okay, no, we want it like this.
I do think, though, if it's a spiritual war. It's a war of consciousness. It's a spiritual war.
For sure.
I think there are people who aren't living from their truest self, their most authentic self, which is not, again, on anybody's fault. I think we weren't raised to really tune in, to be critical thinkers, to do what we love to do, and to follow our dreams, right? And so because of that, I feel like why this spiritual war is that we're not living our best self, right? And so spiritually, we're hungry, we're lost, rather than there's a few of us who have followed our spiritual mission and are living to our truest potential, but not a lot of us are. And I think this is where it is a time for that transition, where more people will be able to recognize this battle of like choosing to live life rather than just following what other people are doing.
But here's an interesting little concept on the side about the war between dark and light. So because I have been to God in the 12th dimension. Right? So I've seen the be all and end all, the alpha and the omega. Like there's nothing that's the universal all one conscious mind. Then right below that, the dimension below that is where he splits into yin yang. That's where the war in essence starts. As soon as you split into yin yang, that's the dark and the light right there. And so I find it so amusing that if you think about like this age-old, like in the movies, this age-old battle of souls, the dark and the light. And you think about like God in the 12th dimension, and you're like, okay, so God in the 12th dimension, we know him as a benevolent being, right? The universe is naturally benevolent. I mean, we're still finding that out. I think we've come out of a very malevolent time where darkness ruled. So nobody's really believing us when we say that just yet, but they will with time. He's primarily benevolent, so it's a natural benevolent universe. And what I was thinking was, that's why the souls are fighting, because the point is they want control over the 12th dimension. Because the dark souls, if they get more souls than the light souls, in essence, they get to control the 12th dimensional God, universal mind, in which case he turns malevolent.
Or it just cycles from one polarity to the other. Yes.
But if you go into the 11th dimension where they have to be equal, because you know yin
Yeah.
and yang, then nobody can win, I guess. But there's a battle for souls. They want the souls. And I'm saying, why do they want the souls? For what reason? Because they're trying to take over the 12th dimension.
Yeah.
This is my theory.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think we represent the full 12 dimensions here, but I think our bodies have access to beyond the 12th dimension.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming now, and for the purpose of this conversation, that the 12th dimension is the final dimension, right? Because that's where the source sits. Because I do believe in more than 12 dimensions, but just for the
Yeah.
purposes of this conversation.
Well, beyond that, it's beyond our comprehension because it's a whole nother octave of our reality. And so we live in this reality because we can only handle what this reality has to offer because there's still so much to experience. And I think we've been not being able to experience all of it because we've been in a shadow period. But I think shadow period is like saying teenage years for kids. During the teenage years, some kids act crazy and some kids act normal because they're going through like hormonal spurs. And so sometimes they're like, mean, sometimes they're not because they don't really know what's happening to their bodies. But we don't really judge them for that. And so in that stage, like they might see their parents as like, oh, parents are so mean because they won't let me do what I want to do. But then as you get older, you realize, okay, my parents were helping me to go through teenage years and I can't get mad for that. Even though during that time they weren't showing me any love. I believe that we are these teenage kids, boys and girls, trying to like fight our way into getting the world to recognize us like teenagers. And our parent, Mother God, Father Sky, was like, let them play and do all the things they're gonna do to hurt each other, because if we keep stopping them from hurting each other, they won't know their power, right? And so we experience the dark light and the dark winning longer because it wanted us to show that we are the dark and light, and in that choice, do we go back to like the one unit versus the two separated. And so I do think that to love both sides, you have to learn to like not have love, right? To truly love, you have to actually not have love to say that you can love.
Well, this is why the dark exists.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying is I think the more we realize that like discipline to me feels like the devil. But that's because I created a discipline to make sure I wasn't having fun all the time, but I was disciplining myself. And that's like my devil, my own image of, the devil telling me I have to do that because I hate not doing it. I hate not being able to do what I want to do, but having to do what I have to do, right? And that's like discipline that gives us the ability that goes to Virgo. So what's really exciting is that we created the dark for ourselves because we wanted to show that we can love beyond when someone doesn't connect to love, right? And that's kind of our way of showing our gifts. So I think the darkness is in a way for us to shine our light, because if there was no darkness, all of us would blind each other. But with the darkness, our light looks like stars in the sky.
No, but exactly. I mean, my train of thought is virtually exactly the same as yours. I had a friend tell me the other day they had somebody that, I don't know, got possessed or something by a demon or whatever. But and they didn't believe the story, but they wanted to hear my opinion of it. And when she told me what the guy said after he got rid of the demon, I actually believed that he did have a demon, because his description of God and what he felt was so accurate. I mean, it's exactly what I felt. And it's such a specific description. Like, describing the love of God descending into your physical body is a very specific experience. Do you know what I'm saying? And he just described it to a T. And I just thought, it's just so interesting for somebody to experience that and being able to articulate it. And I told him, I said, actually, I do believe him. I said, but at the same time, he was, apparently he was an atheist before. And then he turned Christian, and then the demons went, or whatever. And I said to them, I said, first of all, those things generally attach themselves to people easiest that don't have a relationship with God. It's very difficult for them to attach to humans that have a relationship with God. This is the first thing I told them. I said the second thing that you have to note, so also, in other words, if something like that is coming, all you need to do is pray. I mean, provided you have a relationship with God, and it's already taken care of. So they have no power over you if you've got a relationship with God. And then the second thing I said was exactly what you said, which is, outside of the 12th dimension, that stuff splits in two, the darkness and the light. So I'm telling you now, even the demons come from God, and that's why they can't defeat God, because by default, they're already in a dimension below him. Do you know what I'm saying? They already come from him. So you can't defeat him. And the reason why he would have created those demons to begin with is, yes, so that you can if you only know your light and you don't know what is light, you have to see what is not light so that you can get to know the light. And this is really the reason why that's all created. And they seem to be very grateful for the explanation, but to me it makes complete sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Aries rising here.
Yep. As we get higher up, it just is more convoluted, but it's actually simpler, right? It's just us having an experience in so many different fractal perceptions of ourselves. And so that's why it's really beautiful. That's why I love astrology. Astrology actually gives us all the different fractals of the source, fractalizing, experiencing different perspective. So all of us have these different perspective in our constellation chart.
Mars in Leo is extra hot.
Ooh.
And so there is a risk of inflammation. It can also be aggravated by large amounts of foods that we considered heat foods, alcohol, coffee, spicy foods. Should probably slow down on those. I would say with Mars in Leo, you can definitely drink some water. Which temperature water though? Because you want to counteract the cold of Saturn in Pisces. Saturn in Pisces is very cold. And then you've got this heat with Mars in Leo. And then you've got this like fluid flow with Pluto in Aquarius.
I'd say this is kind of like in herbs when they have like that polarity of hot and cold together that makes neutral. I think it's a time where it's to have warmth enough to handle like the coldness of Saturn and Pisces, but not so hot that you're also heating up and burning up the exterior of your body, right? So you want that like neutral warm, not too hot and not too cold.
Interesting. Well, we've just come out of Libra season, so we should all have learned how to find balance. That's what it sounds like you're saying. We need to find balance between the hot and the cold.
Exactly. And it's balance also, not by balance by having one, but by balance having two, right? Because I think in the West we tend to say, can I have this or that? And maybe we can say no. How about we can have this and that?
So you're talking now about having like an alcoholic milkshake.
Is
that what we're talking about?
Yes, exactly. Having that neutrality through having both. You can have both now, the light and the dark, to neutralize it.
In South Africa, we call those Don Pedros. It's a milkshake with a shot of whiskey in it. It's my favorite dessert in the world.
Exactly. So that milkshake will keep you cool, but then a shot of whiskey is warming you up from inside. Definitely do not condone alcohol, but that's a good example.
We're just using it as examples. Just examples.
Exactly.
We ain't promoting that kind of behavior. At least not until Neptune is back at 29 degrees Pisces.
You can have a little bit of indulgences.
Listen here, we've been indulging since Jupiter entered Taurus. I mean...
Yes, definitely.
Well, before that, so I had Jupiter in Aries, right? Which was the expansion of my physical body. So I picked up weight. Then Jupiter entered Taurus. So I overindulged in food and picked up more weight. So now I'm counting on Saturn retrograding over my sun to lose the weight again.
Yeah. Saturn would be like your physical trainer
Yeah.
that looks at you and said, "What did Jupiter do to you?" Jupiter made some good food. Definitely made some good food.
I'm ruled by Mars. So with Mars now going through Cancer and Leo, I've been working out at home.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
So that is all about Mars, Mars retrograde, illegal and legal aliens, and the spiritual war for the 12th dimension. Thank you, everybody.
Yes. Was so awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, Dr. Charlier.
Thank you, Black Moon Lilith.
Bye.
Please like this video, share it with your craziest friend and subscribe or follow for more of this madness.